back to my channel. So you might hear a little bit of landscaping noise going on in the background, but this is my only time to film while my children are out of the house and you don't hear screaming in the background, so we're just gonna go with it for now. It's either children or landscaping 90% of the time. So you guys know I normally like to stick to the more small, less known cases, but this case is more than likely in a top 10 of the most requested cases that I get on my channel, so I figured I would go ahead and cover it for you guys today. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Brookelyn Farthing, otherwise known as Brooke by her friends and family, and that will be how I refer to her in this entire video. Brookelyn was 18 years old when she was last seen on June 22nd in Berea, Kentucky in 2013. Brookelyn lived in a home with her mother, stepfather, and her two sisters, her older sister Tasha and her younger sister Paige. That Friday on the 21st, so the day before she technically was labeled as a missing person, she had a pretty exciting day. Her and her little sister Paige went to get their license that morning. She was incredibly excited about that. They were celebrating their papa's 70th birthday that day, and then they even had plans to go later that night, Paige, Brooke, and their cousin, to a birthday party of one of her friends. It was, again, just a typical 18-year-old house party. She was an outgoing and incredibly independent young woman. While she appeared to be the biggest girly girl, which she was most of the time, she always had her purse, always had her clothes with her, always dressed up, wanted to look nice. She had this flip side of her that loved to be outside. She was, as I said before, incredibly independent. She did what she wanted. She could take care of herself. She wanted to go fishing, hang out with the guys. So she was this soft and, beautiful young woman, but at the same time, she could really hold her own. So that day, Friday the 21st of June, 2013, everything went on as normal. She passed her test, got her license, celebrated her papa's birthday with her entire family, and then, as I said before, they all went to this house party, Paige, Brooke, and her cousin. Now, when they got there, for one reason or another, Paige and their cousin decided to go ahead and leave a little bit early. I'm pretty sure it was Brooke's friend's birthday party. I know it was a very tight-knit community, so everyone knew everyone. You were friends with everybody, no matter the age, sister, brother, cousins, friends, older, younger, everyone just kind of hung out together. But they decided to go, which wasn't a huge issue for Brooke because she was actually planning to stay the night with one of her best friends. She had packed herself a small bag full of dress-up clothes. I mean, this girl was always ready for anything. So they left and she continued to have a pretty good time. At one point in the night, Brooke and the friend she was supposed to stay the night with actually got into a small argument. Now, I'm unsure what the argument's about. Her mother said it was more than likely over a boy, but either way, Brooke no longer wanted to stay with this friend and she decided she was going to go home instead. Now, the problem was she didn't have a ride at this point. And around 2 a.m. when the party was ending, she realized that one of her male friends was incredibly intoxicated and really needed to go home. Now, she had her license, but she didn't have a car in her because she was brought by her cousin and little sister. Now, Josh is a very important character in this story, so pay very close attention to him. So Josh offered for her to borrow his car. Now, I have actually seen this story a couple of different ways. It took some digging to even find out that she actually drove his car. I saw that he drove it and she just got a ride. It's kind of like a confusing mashup situation. But the story that I saw the most was that he simply offered his car up. He said, hey, you can use my car. Brooke at this point was not intoxicated. She could drive this car. She was supposed to drop her friend off, and then Josh was supposed to drop her off at home. Now, Josh didn't know Brooke incredibly well. I said it was a very tight-knit community, but the only reason Josh knew Brooke was through her ex-boyfriend, whose name is Jared. Now, Jared was not there, but him and Brooke were still really close friends. I don't exactly know how Jared knew Josh, but Josh somehow was at this party. People knew of him, but it wasn't like one of those kids that you grew up with forever. He had only known Brooke for maybe 2 or 3 years just simply through seeing her through Jared. So she obviously accepted this. It worked out in everyone's favor. This young man that was incredibly drunk would get home safe. She would get home, no issues, except that's not exactly how any of this went. So they left the house, as I said, around 2 a.m. For one reason or another, instead of taking this young man straight home, Josh said they went and rode horses. I guess he worked at a farm with horses. I'm not exactly sure, but they went and rode horses for a little bit. Welcome to Kentucky. And then they took this young man home, but instead of taking Brooke home, they actually went back to Josh's house. When Brooke got to Josh's house, she was immediately incredibly uncomfortable. There was no electricity, there was no running water. At this point, it was 4 in the morning, so they essentially were just sitting in the dark together, and she didn't know him very well at all. Now, I'm not exactly sure why they decided to go to his house instead of taking Brooke home like the plan that was supposed to originally happen. I don't know if maybe Josh still was a little bit too intoxicated and wanted to wait a little bit before he took her home, but either way, they ended up at his house on Dillon Drive, and the party was on Red Lick Road. I forgot to mention that earlier. So as soon as she got there and realized she was sitting in the dark in a house with absolutely no utilities, she decided to call her little sister and ask her if her cousin could give her a ride home. Her sister told her that unfortunately their cousin had been drinking and there was no way they could come and get her home, but Brooke again didn't seem too concerned about this. She said Jared would more than likely come and pick her up around 6:30 when he got off, because Jared, her ex-boyfriend, worked at a factory. He worked the 3rd shift, so in just a few hours he would be off. So clearly she wasn't too uncomfortable at first. Her sister said that when she was on the phone with her, she didn't seem scared, she didn't seem uncomfortable, she didn't seem overly intoxicated. She just seemed like she was asking for a ride home. But we see a different side of how Brooke felt almost immediately after this phone call was made. As soon as Brooke got off the phone with her sister, she started sending out a series of very frantic texts to friends and to her ex-boyfriend. She had asked her ex-boyfriend to come and get her, which he agreed to, but to her friends, she was letting them know she was incredibly scared for some reason or another to be in this home with Josh. Now, I know sitting in the dark at 4 in the morning with a man you don't know very well is already kind of a scary situation, but she was sending these very, very short texts out, not going into much detail, almost like she didn't even want to be seen on her phone. So the last text that we can 100% pretty much say was sent from Brooke was sent at 4:26 in the morning to Jared. Now, this isn't even 30 minutes after she arrived at Josh's house, and the text she sent to Jared said, "Please, I am begging you, get off work, hurry, I am so scared." So I wasn't able to confirm or not, but I don't know if any more texts were sent between 4:26 in the morning and I think it was 5:30 to 5:45 in the morning. So about an hour span went by where there weren't any text messages from what I've seen. Now, I could totally be wrong, and if you know any more than me, please feel free to leave it down in the comments. So at 5:45, just before Jared was going to get off work and come and pick her up, a very strange text message came to his phone from Brooke, and it just said, "I don't need a ride anymore. I'm going to a party over in Rockcastle County." So it switched from her begging pretty much anyone possible to come and pick her up, her being scared, her being uncomfortable, to all of a sudden she was fine and was going to a party in another county at almost 6 a.m. Jared asked her who exactly she was going with, where in specific she was going, and never received a text back, and this would be the last time anyone would ever hear from Brooke. Brooke was actually supposed to go to a car show with her friends at 9 a.m. that morning. So for her to be going to another county that was 30 minutes away at 6 in the morning, at 5:36 in the morning, it just didn't really make any sense. That morning, all of her friends were trying to get in contact with her. They were calling her repeatedly, calling all of her friends that she was with the night before, trying to figure out where she was to come and get her to go to this car show. Nobody could reach her at all. So they decided to call Paige and ask Paige if she knew where Brooke was. This is when Paige realized that Brooke had never actually come home that morning. Brooke had told Paige over the phone when they had that short conversation that she could go ahead and lock the door, but just to listen out for her around 6:30, 7 o'clock when she would get home to unlock it and let her inside. And this is when Paige kind of realizes that never happened. She never showed up at home. Where in the heck is she? By that afternoon, her friends decided to call the rest of her family after they had gone to multiple different houses, called every single person they knew, and not a single person had seen her since the night before when she left with Josh and her other male friend. Her family started calling everyone they knew as well, to absolutely no avail, and the only thing they knew for certain was that when Paige talked to Brooke, she was at Josh's house. That is the only thing they knew, but keep in mind, no one knew who Josh was. Paige got in contact with a few people and was able to get Josh's phone number, and Tasha, their older sister, decided to call him herself. She asked him if Brooke was still at his house, if she had ever been there really to begin with, and how exactly he even knew her, because when you live in such a tight-knit community and your loved one goes missing and the last person they were with was this one person that nobody seems to really know, it can be really alarming. Josh goes on to tell Tasha that Brooke had mentioned going to a party in Rockcastle County and that he didn't know anyone that was going to be there, didn't know any specific location of the party, he didn't know how she got there, because he said around 6 a.m. he left Brooke at his home. He said that he felt incredibly uncomfortable because Jared was coming to pick her up, and since he was friends with Jared and Jared's ex-girlfriend was in his house, he just didn't really want to be there when Jared got there. So he went to tend to some horses. I'm guessing the same horses they went to ride earlier on that night. So Tasha told him that if he had any information or if he could call some people, try to figure anything out, to please let her know. She went on to say that her husband was the detective of the police department, and if they didn't hear from her in a few hours, they were going to report Brooke as missing, and that is how the conversation ended. At this point, no one was really fearing the worst. Brooke was 18 years old. They knew she was going out to a party that night. I'm guessing this is just something she did frequently, and everyone just assumed she went to this party in Rockcastle, fell asleep because she had been up all night long, her phone died, and she just wasn't awake yet to plug it back in, and that's why no one could reach her. So everyone went about their normal day. And I know a lot of people in the comments are probably going to get angry about this and say, well, if it was my child, I would do this, I would do that. Honestly, this literally sounds like me as an 18-year-old. I did stuff like this all the time. I was always safe. You don't know. If someone usually goes out and spends the night places, doesn't charge their phone, is gone all night long, you never know. So they had no idea at this point and no reason to think anything bad had happened or that she was a missing person. So please be gentle in the comments below. So they all went about their day, still keeping in contact with Brooke's friends who were still trying to find her. They were just simply waiting for a phone call from Brooke. Now, Brooke's sister Tasha and Tasha's family were all planning to go to the lake that day, and they packed up their car and were heading off and got about 5 minutes down the road to a gas station when Tasha receives a phone call from Josh. And Josh is on the other end of the line, absolutely panicking. He's saying, I'm really nervous, I'm scared, I think something bad's happened. And Tasha's like, what in the world do you mean? What are you trying to say here? So Josh then goes on to tell her, Brooke's items that she brought with her from the party are still in my house. So this is when Tasha realizes something was very wrong. I told you in the beginning that Brooke was an incredibly huge girly girl. She wanted her purse with her at all times, her makeup that was in her purse with her, her clothes. She always had her stuff with her, and she did not let anyone touch it, mess with it, sit by it. She was very protective over her items. Even if she was at her sister's house, Tasha said she would carry her purse from one room to another. She was just very attached to her belongings, and if she wouldn't even leave them at her sister's house, there's no way she would have left any of her belongings at Josh's house, someone that she barely knew. Tasha asked Josh to go through her items, see what's in there, what she left behind, see if maybe her phone was in one of her bags because her purse was there as well, wondering if that's why she wasn't answering her phone. And that's when Josh decides to release a little bit of information that you would think he probably would have told her earlier on in the day. He tells her he can't get to the items. And Tasha asks him why, and he says because he's looking through a hole in his window because his house caught fire that early morning. This is when he adds on to his story from earlier, saying he left Brooke, at 6 in the morning that morning, went to take care of the horses, and he says when he got back just at around 7, he came back to his house on fire, and Brooke was nowhere to be found. Now, why he left out that massive chunk of information is absolutely beyond me, but the house had no electricity whatsoever, so there really wasn't any way for a spontaneous fire to start. So he said that when he left, Brooke was sitting on the couch with a cigarette and started blaming her for this fire. But at this point, Brooke's family didn't care if she started a fire, what exactly was happening. She was gone. All of her belongings were still in the home that just so happened to catch fire. So 911 was immediately called and she was reported as a missing person. Now, the family was suspicious from the get-go because when they called 911, they double-checked to make sure that Josh even reported this fire, to check to see if the fire department even went out there, because when you forget that massive of a piece of a story and then all of a sudden after you've had a while to sit on the fact that, you know, this girl's family is part of the police department, a detective in specific, it's interesting that all of a sudden you come out with this information. So his story was questioned from the beginning and is still questioned to this day.
We've been told that she was just there to hang out.
As of now, KSP says they are only linked because the home is the last place somebody saw Farthing.
Right now, she's just missing. And hopefully that's what this will end up being, just a missing persons case. If the detectives on the scene determine that it's needed, we would certainly look into a ground search.
They soon figure out that everything had not been left behind at Josh's house. And the things that she did leave behind, she would have needed. Her purse was still there with her wallet, any money, anything important that she had. Her bag with all of her changes of clothes was still there. And her shoes, her only pair of shoes, were still on the front porch. The only things gone were Brooke and her cell phone. They tried to track her phone in hopes that they would be able to locate her. And her phone kept hanging off a tower, and I think it's either blue lick or blue tick. I've seen it again like a million different ways. When you ping a phone to a tower, it means the phone is just in the 3-mile radius around the tower. And interestingly enough, Josh's house, I'm pretty sure, is in that 3-mile radius, and if it's not in the 3-mile radius, it is right outside of it. But searching this particular area was a massive issue. It was heavily wooded with cliffs and sinkholes, all kinds of poisonous snakes. An extensive search was done that ended up covering over 16,000 acres very methodically with cadaver dogs, but nothing of Brooke was found at all. The locals in the area like to say that it's uphill both ways in this area. And if you're not from the South like I am, you probably don't know what that means. Basically, it is just hill after cliff after hill after cliff. Like, it is difficult no matter which way you go. There is no easy way around this area. The cell signal in this area is absolutely horrendous. There are multiple bodies of water. You could drive down a road in this area and there will be like 10 other roads branching off of it that literally go to nowhere. You can go around a turn that seems like it's flat, look to your right, and there's literally a complete drop off right beside you. The detective said you could be driving on the road, roll down your window, throw something out the window, and it will go over the largest cliff and nobody will ever find it. It is just a horrific place for someone to go missing. It has been years since she went missing and they still have covered nowhere near the amount of space they need to cover. It just takes so much to cover such a small area because they need highly trained people to make sure nobody gets hurt, and every single place they have searched, they had to go back and search a second time just to be sure. If that gives you an idea of how incredibly thick the wildlife is, it's absolutely insane. While a search in this area was going on for Brooke, investigators dug a little bit deeper into the story and tried to find out about this party in Rockcastle County. After speaking to everyone they possibly could, Brooke's friends, going through her text messages, they found out that there was no party in Rockcastle County. This led everyone to believe, which majority of people already assumed since the beginning, that the last text message from Brooke's phone at around 5:30 in the morning sent to Jared about this party and saying he didn't need to come pick her up was not actually sent by Brooke. Authorities started asking people in Estill, Jackson, Rockcastle, and Madison counties to check all of their properties to look for any freshly dug dirt, any random ditches that may appear, any belongings, cell phones, items of clothing, unusual smells. Because this area was so large and there were so many private properties, they needed everyone's help they could possibly get, but no one had any useful information. They had so many leads, and I'm pretty sure to this day they still have leads, but every single one was thoroughly checked out and nothing turned up. This is one of those cases where the entire community strongly believes something bad happened to Brooke, and they are all pointing the finger at one particular person. And I'm sure at this point you can kind of guess who this one particular person is. And while everyone's allowed their own opinions, it has also kind of hindered the case because rumors spread incredibly easily and incredibly fast. With the parties that happen here and it being, you know, young adults involved, a lot of things ended up being called in that were just speculation. It wasn't based off of any facts, and it kind of just led authorities in circles. And to add to all of this, the fire was not even treated as suspicious originally. When the fire department got there, at this point, no one was even aware that Brooke was missing. It wasn't, I think, until later that day, into the next day, the 23rd, that everyone really got a grasp around the fact that Brooke could not be found. So the fire that was in the home, everyone says, is the key to this entire case. Now, I'm not a professional, but I, unfortunately, in my lifetime, have had quite a few run-ins with situations involving fires, and I know they can tell you so much about what possibly happened. So the fire in Josh's home that morning, again, he said he left at 6 a.m. and Brooke was sitting on the couch smoking a cigarette. But he said when he got home at 7 a.m. there was a fire inside of his house. That is an hour. When the fire department got there, they said it was just a small fire. They were able to get it under control fairly quickly, and it mainly centered around the couch. So the very last place he claims Brooke to have been. Now, it burned majority of the couch, and it burned a decent sized hole in the floor underneath of it. Now, again, I am not a professional, but to me, it kind of sounds like something was possibly poured there or put there for the fire to be so localized. The couch was just kind of drug outside after this fire, and for I think around 2 weeks, no one even messed with it. So any possible evidence that was on that couch was gone. But no one really thought at first to connect Brooke's disappearance with Josh, even though that was the last place she was known to be, because everyone was just kind of assuming that she left at some point. So we're just gonna go ahead and start talking about the theories at this point, because there is not much more information out about this other than that. So let's talk about the largest theory and what majority of people are assuming at this point, and that is that Josh had something to do with whatever happened to Brooke. So Josh lent his car to Brooke to drive this incredibly intoxicated male home, and she had no choice but to return his car back to his home. Now, what confuses me is why he didn't offer to take her home after that. Now, she knew she needed to get home one way or another, and I don't think she would have taken up this opportunity to use Josh's car unless he said he would take her home afterwards. Clearly, she drove them around at 2 a.m. to the horses to take this other male home because the other two were intoxicated. So I just can't wrap my head around why he couldn't have taken her home around 4 a.m. when they got home. I know that's about 2 hours after he had stopped drinking, but we do know that at 6 a.m. he was sober enough to go and check on these horses. So I don't understand what the major malfunction is and why this never happened. So Josh said at 6 a.m. he left her sitting on the couch to go take care of the horses because he didn't want to see Jared. Yet he told the family that she mentioned going to this party in Rockcastle County. Now, she told Jared about this party at 5:30, meaning Josh was still in the house when she decided to go to this party, and when she decided Jared wasn't coming to pick her up anymore. Josh basically contradicts his alibi in his own story. You can't say that she was going to leave to go to a party with someone other than Jared and then claim the whole reason you left was because Jared was coming. You know, that makes not a single bit of sense. Then I start to wonder about how Josh even knew about this party to begin with. The only phone call, and I know this for a fact because I've been able to verify, the only phone call she made where she would have vocally said something for Josh to hear it was the phone call to her sister right after she got to Josh's house. And all she said in this phone call was that she wanted a ride home. She didn't mention this party, nothing. Everything else was sent by text messages. And according to police, there is nothing in these text messages that even mention a party in Rockcastle County other than the random text message that everyone assumes was not sent by her to Jared at around 5:30 in the morning when Josh, by his own story, said he was still in the house. So my question is, how did she know about the party in Rockcastle? If she wanted to go to the party in Rockcastle, she would have had to ask someone for a ride. Well, we know Jared wasn't giving her a ride because she told him she didn't need one anymore. There are no text messages of her arranging a ride. Going to Josh's house was a last-minute decision, so no one knew she was there other than her sister, who wasn't coming to give her a ride. So then my thought process goes to, okay, well, maybe an attempt to not hurt Josh's feelings about her feeling so uncomfortable, she used this party as a cover-up reason for why she had to leave. Oh wait, except that still won't work because she called off her only ride to anywhere. So I'm really interested to know how Josh found out about this party in Rockcastle County and how he's going to claim that's where she was going, yet his alibi is based around the fact that Jared was coming to pick her up that morning. The only reason she would have decided to go to another party, which first of all, what party is at 6 in the morning? The only reason she would decide to go would be if it got her out of Josh's house faster. According to the fire and how small it was at 7 in the morning, there is no way it sat there and just kind of slowly burned for about an hour until the whole couch caught fire. If you know anything about fires, you know how quickly these things catch. That means she would have had to have either been there right before 7 in the morning or it was started a different way. And if she was still at the house shortly before 7, then this party didn't get her out of the house faster than Jared picking her up would have, which means the party, even though it already makes 0 sense, now makes even less sense. She also wouldn't be going about 30 minutes away to a party at 6 in the morning, knowing at 9 she had to meet with friends to go to a car show. Even if the couch did set fire, as Josh says, because Brooke might have been sitting there between 6:30 and 7 a.m. smoking a cigarette, it still doesn't make sense. So let's go ahead and play into his story of she started a fire on the couch from smoking a cigarette. Maybe because she didn't know Josh very well, this fire started, she didn't know what to do, and she panicked, so she ran. You know, I've been there. I've been in that situation, and that would be the only reason it would make sense for her items to be left behind. And my personal experience that I had, you can bet that I left half naked with no shoes with my baby in one hand and my dogs in the other. I left everything else behind. So that makes sense. For a minute you're like, okay, you know, maybe she did start this fire, freaked out, and just ran and left everything because she didn't want to have to admit, hey, I started this fire. But why didn't she go to someone for help? He had tons of neighbors. He lived on a cul-de-sac. There were stores and things nearby. Why didn't she go and say, hey, there's a fire, call? Why didn't she call? And mainly, why didn't she show back up somewhere? You know, I understand it would suck to accidentally start a fire in someone's house, but that is not a reason she would just never come back to her family. That doesn't make any sense. She would not have run away. The situation was too chaotic and unplannable to plan something like running away. Plus, she had absolutely no reason to. We know she didn't have a car to use to travel. We know, according to Josh, her only ride home was at a horse farm. and unable to take her anywhere, and apparently was just refusing to take her anywhere. So how did she get miles away shortly after? It doesn't make sense. Majority of people, her family included, think that there was something very incriminating on this couch. There are a lot of people that think there would have been evidence of some sort of sexual assault. I personally don't think there would have been blood or anything of the sort, or they probably would have found it somewhere else in the home. She did not die in this fire. There were no remains left behind. It was a small enough fire to where there would have been something behind, and there wasn't. So she quite simply just vanished. I wonder why Josh didn't tell Tasha at first about this fire. Again, that's incredibly important, especially when her sister was, as far as everyone knew, in this home in the time frame, and her items were still hanging out at the house. You know, I wonder why it took him sitting for a few hours on the fact that police were going to be called for him to finally call and be like, oh hey, I'm kind of worried, her items are here. You guys know how unbiased I try to be in my videos, and I did that here. I tried to look at it from a standpoint of everyone thinking Josh did something, and I tried to look at it from his own story, and honestly, nothing at all makes sense. There are a ton of people that have pointed out that the last text message does not sound like a typical text message that Brooke would have sent. For instance, why would she say, oh, I'm going to this and this county to a party? You know, who do you know that refers to going places and they literally state the entire county they're going to be in? I understand that that is kind of more of a southern thing to do, but everyone who knows her knows that's not how she would have said it at all. She would have been more specific, and because it was such a tight-knit community and everyone knew everyone, she would have been like, oh, I'm going to this person's house. Oh, I'm going to this person's house, because you know, Jared would have known who that person was. A lot of people strongly believe that that was just a distraction to make sure that no one came to the house that morning, especially Jared, someone who really, really cared about her. She didn't spend hours begging for a ride and telling everyone she knew how terrified she was, only to all of a sudden go to some party with no text messages about it, no calls about it, and she didn't even end up in Rockcastle County. It's still an ongoing investigation, obviously, and I think with this case in particular, it's going to be one of those that is solved. I think it's just going to take the right thing being found to solve this case. It reminds me a lot of the Kelsey Shelling case, where things seem so incredibly obvious. It just takes time. You know, investigators can't solve everything overnight, and you know, when items like this couch with possible evidence are not treated properly at first simply because authorities just don't know to treat it any differently, things like this can happen. Evidence is gone. Police have gone over this couch over and over and over again. Forensic examinations, multiple of them have been done on this couch trying to find anything left behind. But unfortunately, thanks to the fire and sitting outside for weeks, nothing on it has been found. Authorities are saying right now still that this fire is going to probably solve this case, but they can't release too much information because it is an ongoing investigation and they do not want to compromise anything. They have something, I think, and they are working really damn hard on it to try to make sure they're able to charge someone and bring justice and at least the family some sort of closure, because in the end, that's what it's about. And I honestly can say I think it is going to happen with this case.
We're not looking for rumors. We're looking for somebody that can actually come forward and lay it out for us. Somebody knows what's going on, and we would like to be able to answer those questions and provide that information to the family.
Now there's a $14,000 reward for any information leading to the whereabouts of Brooke or any information on what might have happened that early morning. Someone out there knows something. As I always say, what sucks though about the situation is that there are so many rumors being spread, and there's a lot of telephone type situations going on where someone thinks something and it's kind of being spread as fact instead of speculation, and that is what police are trying to avoid at this time. They want actual factual information, and someone saw something that morning, heard something that morning, maybe someone has confided in someone with information, actual information, so they're asking anyone possible to come forward as long as it is actually able to be proven. So let me know what you guys think down below. Obviously, everyone has been, and probably until this is solved, will always be throwing Josh under the bus. I personally do think a lot of his information contradicts itself. His story and his alibi, it doesn't match up at all. I think it's very coincidental that the last place she was seen sitting on catches fire in a house without electricity. You know, it's very suspicious, I will say that. So I'm interested to see what happens with this case. Detectives and the family are not stopping until they figure it out, and everyone in this community is pushing for answers. So please help spread Brooke's story as far as you possibly can. Hopefully this family will eventually have justice. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button to become a part of the Howland fam so we can bring them home together. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.